Welcome back to the Tank Me Later podcast, which is part of Fantasy Basketball International. This is Noah Rubin, and this is episode 48. We're going to be analyzing some trades that have gone down in Dynasty leagues, whether it's a submission from Twitter or from some of the leagues that I personally play in. And we're just going to break down winners, losers, team direction, things like that. So let's go ahead and get into it. All right, as I said, we're going to be breaking down some trades. I put out a tweet a couple of days ago just asking for people to submit any trades that have gone down recently in any of their leagues. So we're able to get a handful of those, added in a few from Dynasty 30 League that have gone down, which is a Dynasty League featuring 30 fantasy basketball analysts. I mean, kind of self-explanatory there, but we will go ahead and I have them, the tweets that they were submitted in, just kind of clipped, made it pretty easy, and we can make sure we don't miss any context here. So this first one is from Dio, who works for Sports Ethos or writes for Sports Ethos. Said he's the 2 seed, and this is actually from the Dynasty 30. We'll hit some more of those at the end, but this one was a submitted one that's from Dynasty 30, and he has the second best record in the league, trading with Rhett Bauer, who just changed his podcast. It is Roundball Rhetoric. I guess he changed it a few months ago. It's not recent, but I just wanted to make sure I said it right. And so they made this trade. It was Jaime Jaquez and a first, which will be a late first. It'll the number 2 seed. So I believe, based on how this league works, that'll just be pick 29. I don't remember for sure if the results of the playoffs actually impact that, or if it's like the NBA and it's just based on the regular season standings. But Jaime Jaquez in a late first for Vince Williams and a 2025 second from Rhett's team, which may seem like it'll be an early second. However, Rhett is currently in a rebuild, but I don't think he will be rebuilding next year because he has Darius Garland, Trey Murphy, Derek Lively, Jaime Jaquez, Asar Thompson, Robert Williams, Patrick Williams, Andrew Nimhard, Jaden McDaniels, Jarris Walker, a few guys that are definitely Rhett guys. But he also has 3 firsts this year from, let me see if I can figure out, from one other playoff team. And I don't know if the other one is also a playoff team. Very well could be. But 3 firsts this year, 2 firsts and a second next year. And this is added context that I won't have for all of these, but I just have this league here, so I'm able to see that. So Jaime Jaquez is a guy that I think I'm a little higher on than a lot of analysts because I'm more in favor of just like maybe guys that aren't as elite at specific categories, but are just like really, really good basketball players that'll be on the floor a lot, will have opportunity to produce in other ways, even if they don't have elite categorical value. Whereas a guy like Vince Williams Jr. has, played really well this year, but also while playing really well, like as a scorer in an increased role, has been pretty good at getting steals as well. Just like past 2 months, 13.3 points, 6 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1.2 steals, 1.8 threes. I don't know if he'll have the same volume of scoring when the team is fully healthy, whereas Jaime Jaquez, his roles this season has probably been pretty similar to what it'll be for the next however many years that he's with the Heat. I mean, could be a little different as it maybe expands, but also he's also been able to have an expanded role at times this season with injuries they've been facing. So I think I'd rather have, even if it is a weaker class, the guaranteed first over what could be an early second. I don't think that's super controversial, but I think, could just be difference of opinion there. But Jaime Jaquez, I have ranked 89th, and I have Vince Williams, I believe, a little lower from my most recent Dynasty rankings. And Vince Williams, I have at 152. However, I think that for this season, what we've seen is Vince Williams be a slightly better, maybe not even slightly, just a better fantasy asset. I mean, past 2 months, Basketball Monster has him 87th in 9-cat, and it has Jaime Jaquez 230th, which I think if you're just comparing it to over the course of the season, Jaime Jaquez is 145 on Basketball Monster, and Vince Williams is 133. So fairly similar, both young guys, with Vince Williams being in his second year and Jaime Jaquez being a rookie, but both are 23. So I like the idea of Rhett getting a first. And actually, that may have been the other first that I was talking about. So it is 2 firsts, and I totally just forgot that he had just gotten this first right here when I was looking at his team. So Jaquez is a guy that I really like, and I also have been very high on Vince Williams. So I think it's a pretty even trade, though. I think for the rest of the season, I'd rather have Vince Williams than Jaquez. So I like this trade for both sides because Vince Williams, this may not be the best season of his career, but it's the largest role guaranteed that he'll have. Because next year, when Desmond Bane is back and John Moran is back and Marcus Smart is either back, or if I'm not just speculating here, if they make a trade to send him out and bring in somebody else, I don't know. I don't know if Vince Williams starts, whereas Jaime Jaquez is played really well as a rookie, and I would assume continues to see a larger role moving forward. We'll see what ends up happening there, but I think this is a nice win-win move here where Red is able to reload, and I'm assuming he's going to make kind of a push for the playoffs next year, and then Dio is able to get a player that hopefully doesn't get shut down as Memphis kind of gets towards the end of the season. Maybe needs to improve their lottery odds. Hopefully he'll have Vince Williams for at least the rest of this playoff run, because I think that's what makes it pretty even. Now, if Vince Williams gets shut down, which I don't think is a guarantee, but I think it's a chance, then I think Rhett ends up winning this based on team direction and what both teams kind of need. All right, this one I remember was a little bit of reading here. So we had Will, who submitted the tweet, was looking to make 2 win now moves. He made 2 win now moves in a 20-team, 13-category league, and the other categories were added in field goals made, free throws made, 3-point percentage, and they separated offensive rebound and defensive rebounds. So the trades, let's see. So the Dame trade was in November, which actually I didn't ever hear back from him because I kind of asked if this was a keeper league, but I'm going to just treat it with how I think it is because he never responded and said whether this was a official keeper league. But Donovan Mitchell and Siakam and a 5th-round pick next year for Scoot, Pajemski, and a 2nd-round pick next year. And then also getting Dame and an 11th-round pick for Casey Wallace, Corey Kispert, and a 1st. So the Dame trade was in November. The Donovan Mitchell Siakam trade was in December. So I'm assuming that things are going well and that this is now a team that is in contention to win the championship. I mean, having Donovan Mitchell, Damian Lillard, Siakam. And then it looks like he also had an offer to give up Zion and get Miles Turner in a 1st that should be around pick 10. I think that the rounds are kind of throwing me off with what exactly this looks like. But I think having Damian Lillard, Donovan Mitchell, and Siakam is a lot to be able to push for a championship. I'm hoping the rest of the team is able to supplement that in a 20-team league. It really makes this team contending because I think the extra categories may not change a ton based on valuation other than give a nice boost to players that take a lot of shots and make a lot of shots, because obviously it's the extra field goals made. So you're not just getting a boost for shooting 3 for 4. You're also getting the extra boost for making 13 of 27 shots. So that helps a little bit there. So I think giving up Casey Wallace, Corey Kispert, and a 1st for Dame and an 11th, obviously a win now move. And at the time, Corey Kispert and Casey Wallace both had smaller roles. And I think Kispert is making more of a standard league. And this is a 20-team league, but like a redraft impact than Casey Wallace is. But I still really like Casey Wallace for the future. But again, I think when you look at this as a whole, instead of just doing individual value of each trade, acquiring Mitchell, Siakam, and Lillard for Scoot, Podziemski, Casey Wallace, and Corey Kispert, you should win a championship. If you win the whole thing, then great. I can't argue with the results. But if you don't, then I think you end up giving up a ton to be able to have a chance. But I mean, I think that's kind of the risk you run every single time you make a win now move. But yeah, I think that there was a good bit to unpack here. And yeah, hopefully you're able to get one this year, because based on this, I guess if it is an official keeper league where you're able to keep other guys at certain rounds that make the lack of a round 1 and round 2 pick look better, then I think then this is fine. But obviously losing out on a first and a second next year makes it pretty difficult to try and compete next season. But I guess it depends on the keepers and everything. So we'll move to the next one. I've been offered this package for Anthony Davis in a 12-team points league. The pick will probably be top 4, but it's a far way away. I kind of need Anthony Davis to potentially win the league, but it's now the best time to sell high. I think so. It's 12-team points league. It's on sleeper. So you're locking in just one game a week. Anthony Davis isn't missing games like he was last season, so I don't think that really impacts a ton, because you're just choosing one game. So it's not like if he's sitting all the back-to-backs, you're losing out on games there. It's just one game a week. I think that this is like it's a hefty package for AD. In my Dynasty rankings, I have Cade obviously pretty high. I have him 12th, and I have Anthony Davis at 20. Now, these are category leagues. However, I mean, both guys are pretty good in category leagues, aren't just better in points leagues. They're significantly worse in points leagues either way. Adding in Austin Reeves, adding in Dante DiVincenzo, and a 12-team points league is especially just one game a week. I mean, DiVincenzo's been awesome, but I think when you're looking at guys like AD and Cade, it's not just absolutely swinging the trade one way. However, getting in the 2025 first, it could be a top 4 pick in what's supposed to be a better class than this year. It is a good bit away in the sense that you'll go through the rest of the season and next season before you get the chance to even use that pick. But if it's supposed to be really early, which a lot of things can change, that could end up being a guy like a Cooper Flagg. That's another, I don't want to say like just generational prospect, because we feel like that gets thrown out a good bit, but a guy that's supposed to be really freaking good. So I think if you really feel good about your chances of winning this championship with Anthony Davis, then keep him, even if it is a really, really good package for him. However, if you think, okay, if I keep AD, then maybe I have a chance to win, but I don't feel good about it. There's 3 teams that are either better than me or like around the same level. Like I don't feel great about it. Then I have no issue accepting the trade. Cade, I think, is only going to get better. He's already been really good this year. And that 2025 first could end up being worth a good bit. So, yeah, it's all about team direction, I guess, here. But if he says you need Anthony Davis, kind of needing AD to potentially win the league makes me think that, it's not a guarantee. But obviously you have a much better chance to win with AD than without him. So if you think you can win, I say keep him. But if not, definitely do this trade. It's a really good package. All right, 12-team, 9-category, 18 players rostered with 3 minors and 4 players on IR. Team A, who's barely in first place, win now team, a little bit older, gets Şengün, Scotty Barnes, PJ Washington, and a 2024 second. And Team B, that's 5th place, a younger team, has Chet and Wemby, shout out, gets Joel Embiid, Steph Curry, Walker Kessler, a late 2024 first, and what is assumed to be a late 2025 first. So we'll start with, I'll just kind of look at the dynasty values as far as where I have everybody ranked. So earliest would be Joel Embiid at 16. No, excuse me. Scotty Barnes at 13. I have Şengün at 15, Embiid at 16. And then I have Steph at 35, Walker Kessler at 53, and PJ Washington, I think a good bit down there, at 121. So I think just looking at the players, you're getting the two best players in the trade and the worst player in the trade by my dynasty rankings. I know everybody's rankings are going to be different. How teams value players is all different. I'm just saying, just based off mine, for Embiid and Steph, two kind of aging stars, and Walker Kessler, who I think I'm a little lower on now, just, and a lot of it does have to do with his situation, just because the minutes have been iffy. Whether he's starting or not has been iffy, just very inconsistent. I assume within a couple of years, when they feel they're ready to compete truly, that he'll be starting consistently and playing close to 30 minutes per game. However, dynasty rankings also have to take into account what the player is doing this year or next year. So that's why I'm a little lower on him, but I still really like his talent. I think Team A, getting rid of Embiid when you're trying to push for a championship is smart. And I think that there's a handful of trades like that are in this slideshow here. So just because, by the time Embiid gets back, it's probably going to be after the fantasy playoffs in most leagues, especially if you aren't going through the end of the regular season, which shouldn't be, just based on the way the NBA is. Like, it doesn't make as much sense. It's not as much fun to try and play your championship with, half the guys you drafted just sitting out to get ready for the playoffs or to help a team's lottery odds, and you're having to play guys you didn't know played professional basketball at the beginning of the season to try and win you a championship. Maybe you have fun doing that. That's totally fine. However, I think especially in a dynasty league, that's not really what you're going for. So Şengün and Scotty Barnes, I think, are guys that are going to help win now, and PJ Washington, I think, as well. Walker Kessler is probably a year or two away from being truly dominant in fantasy. Embiid should be back next year, I would assume, though moving forward, we don't really know how much another knee injury is going to impact him. And then getting rid of Steph is actually, like, I don't know, kind of strange to me for a team that is a little bit older, but getting younger does make sense. They're extending their window a little bit, even if they are giving up a guy that would help them win a championship this year. Obviously, getting guys back. And overall, I think for redraft purposes or winning this year purposes, having Şengün, Scotty Barnes, and PJ Washington would be a better team than Embiid, Steph, and Walker Kessler based off minutes allocation for Kessler and the injury for Embiid. So I think it's honestly, like, I kind of like this trade for both teams because Team A, that is barely in first place, gets a little younger, but also pretty much helps their team improve and have a better chance to win this season. But the team that's in fifth place, I think this is kind of a retooling situation where I don't feel like that happens often. And maybe it does happen more often in leagues that I'm not in. I just haven't used that strategy much. But I think, knowing you have Chet and Wemby and you have Şengün and Scotty Barnes, like, wow, like, that's a heck of a team. I think when I'm managing a team, I'm more inclined to just continue to ride it out with them because that's based on the way I have them ranked for top 15 players. And I'd rather just hold on to them. However, looking at, a chance to maybe win next season, this is a good move because then you're going to have Chet and Wemby, one, like you should. I mean, already this season, both the guys have been crazy good. And I think next year, they're only going to get better. And then adding in Embiid and Steph next year, and then Kessler as he continues to get better, like, there's no reason for that team to ever lose blocks. Like, that would be insane if they ever did. Also, getting 2 firsts in there. Later first, fine, but 2 first-round picks in a row could either swing those to another team to get in better players or just draft well. I mean, if you have Chet and Wemby, I'm assuming you've gone through some sort of rebuild and had to draft them. So you're used to drafting players and can maybe draft a little bit better. But it's a nice retool, reload. Okay, you're in 5th place. Not going to try and make a run this year, but next year should be a title favorite. And I don't dislike. I think it ends up working out well for both teams. And this is a different league, also from Levine Cuisine, and this is another example of a retool. And I think this one may arguably be a little bit better. So it's Embiid and a late first. I'm assuming from this 3rd place team, it's their first because the 16-20 makes sense. And then Lauri Markkanen, who I have ranked 24th, and Jaime Jaquez, like I said earlier, ranked 89th. I don't really know how I feel about the pick 16-20 first this year, like how much that's going to really be able to compare to Jaquez. Like, I don't think that is going to be a better player than Jaime Jaquez. Now, based on the way the NBA draft shakes out, or based on the way that this specific league's draft shakes out, or your specific league's draft shakes out, that could change a lot. There could be a player that slips in the draft that ends up slipping in your fantasy rookie draft because for whatever reason, a number of reasons. It could be that a player gets drafted in the 20s to a really good situation and is able to see minutes as a rookie. And like those kinds of things like happen that it's hard to predict at this point. But I think looking at the players, like scouting the ones that I have, I think that there will be solid players there. I think honestly, I'm not going to compare anybody directly to Jaime Jaquez, but I think that there's going to be more players that are able to fill a role and play really well, either early on or just like eventually be like really good players, as opposed to last year and like some previous seasons where there were some surefire like stars. Like I think all 5 guys that were drafted in the first 5 picks at least in this past season are all guys that are going to go and be stars. There may not be as many stars in this draft, but I think that a lot of guys that are going to be able to be really good. And I think that that's what this pick could end up being, kind of like a Jaime Jaquez, a guy who doesn't have a super high ceiling, but has a pretty high floor. So I think that is a situation that we could be looking at with this draft. So, but again, Team A is getting help now. Team B, 9th place, ready to reload and try and compete next season, gets Embiid, who is the best player in this trade. Hopefully he's healthy. I think that's going to end up being the difference if he can get back to playing how he has been this year and just say like he plays most of the games but misses back-to-backs in a couple other games here and there. He plays 60, 65 games next year. I almost say 60. Then I think this is a good trade if he's still playing at the level that he did this season. All right, next one. 10-man lock-in points. I'm assuming that means it's on Sleeper. Traded DeJounte Murray, Jalen Williams, and a 2025 first and Jimmy Butler for Kobe White, John Morant, Drew Holiday, and a 2026 first. So I'm going to, because everybody's points rankings are obviously different. I'm just going to look at Yahoo's points rankings. Just to make this a little bit easier for me to look at. Actually, yeah, Yahoo's points rankings. So, because we'll just look at this season's production off the top of my head. I don't play in as many points leagues. I don't even have any points dynasty leagues, but especially because we don't really know the scoring. I'm just going to go based off Yahoo redraft. So this season, I mean, John Morant's the best player in this trade, in my opinion, in a points league. Jimmy Butler has been 37th in points leagues this year. DeJounte Murray, 38. Jalen Williams. Actually, we'll go try to find where he's even ranked. Drew Holiday is 87th. We're going to just search it and make it a little easier. Kobe White is 68th. I just scrolled right past him. And then Jalen Williams is 63rd. So I just scrolled past everybody. So I think So 3 players and a first for 3 players and a first. Giving up DeJounte Murray, Jalen Williams, and Jimmy Butler is a lot. And especially getting an even later first back. But I like John Morant and I like Kobe White, especially in points leagues. If both those guys I like more in points leagues than category leagues. Drew Holiday, I'm not a huge fan of for fantasy, really in either format. And that's more just like how I look at it, not necessarily that they don't have value or anything like that. Or that he doesn't have value. DeJounte is going to be really good for the rest of the season. So if you're not trying to win this year and trying to win in the future, giving up DeJounte Murray and getting back John Moran, I think ended up being a really good move. I think if you're trying to win now, then this trade probably doesn't end up helping a ton, especially because I think based on what we kind of, I don't know, I guess like the narrative around Jimmy Butler is that it's almost time for him to lock in and get the team ready for the playoffs, and so the production will be there a little bit more. But yeah, I think if I'm trying to win now, then the first package is what I'm interested in. But if I'm kind of in a rebuild or just not doing well this year, then I have no problem trading away like an aging Jimmy Butler, DeJounte Murray, who is going to be really good for the rest of this season. But in the future, he's either going to be still in Atlanta playing alongside Trae Young or traded. Well, so limited playing alongside Trae Young, traded somewhere that I'm assuming he's going to be pretty limited. Like it's not going to be the San Antonio level production. Or the third scenario, which honestly I think is the least likely, is that the Hawks trade Trae Young and have DeJounte Murray at point guard moving forward. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think that's the least likely scenario. That would be the best scenario for him. But I think, again, getting John Morant, the best player in this deal, I think I like that, especially if you're not able to win now this year. All right, so a handful of trades have gone down in this league. Miles Bridges for Cam Whitmore and Taylor Hendricks, obviously a package to a rebuilding team. So I think, yeah, getting Cam Whitmore and Taylor Hendricks for Miles Bridges, it's very much a good trade for a team that is trying to win now to get Miles Bridges and a team that is rebuilding to get Cam Whitmore and Taylor Hendricks. I think that works out really well. Let me pull up my rankings again. I have Miles Bridges ranked 69th, and then I have Whitmore 122 and Hendricks 116. Both those guys will like move up as they play more games. I'm not gonna have them ranked top 50 or anything like that, but both of them have that upside where they can just totally shoot up dynasty rankings once they take on larger roles and play more games and develop. Miles Bridges has been really good in Charlotte. I think if he re-signs there, that he'll continue to be good in the future. Like there's no reason to think that his play is going to drop. It does worry me if he ends up signing elsewhere. Now that he's able to, like when he's able to get paid again, because obviously I guess vetoed any potential trades at the deadline this year so he could stay in Charlotte. In my opinion, that it was to stay in Charlotte and put up numbers so he can earn money this upcoming summer. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to stay in Charlotte, but I'm assuming that if a team is going to pay him a lot of money, it's going to be to a team where he's going to be able to produce. So I'm not too worried about him on the court, strictly on the court stuff. I don't want to just like continue to talk about the off the court stuff that I think everybody already knows and has their own opinions on. And I'll just say I don't have him on any of my teams. I don't plan to have him on any of my teams regardless. So, but that's just a personal thing, like personal choice. So whatever, teach his own. Jalen Williams for Evan Mobley. I have Evan Mobley ranked 14th. I have Jalen Williams 31st. I guess Jalen Williams is a win now move, I guess. But there's no way I wouldn't rather have Evan Mobley. So rebuilding win now either way, I'd rather have Evan Mobley than Jalen Williams. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. If you are good with I don't know if you really need steals or something like that to the point where you really want Jalen Williams, that's fine. And if it's a win now move, I guess. But I think long term, Evan Mobley, I have him 14. Then I've gone down on him recently, just trying to be more realistic. But I'm really high on him. I think he's going to be really, really freaking good. Tyler Hero in a second for Jarris Walker, Anthony Black, and Casey Wallace. With a rebuilding team, obviously getting the 3 rookies, and a win now team getting Hero in a second. I think it's a lot to give up for Tyler Hero. I think that if you're in a win now scenario, feel like really good about winning a championship this year, then that's fine to make the move to kind of guarantee yourself the ring. But if you don't get a ring, then I think you lose the trade. Getting, or giving up 3 guys that all went in the top 10 of this past draft, in a talented draft, 3 guys that I think have a lot of fantasy upside, especially in category leagues. It's a lot. It's a lot to give up. So if you don't get a ring, I don't feel good about that trade at all. Next one, Karl Anthony Towns and Karis LeVert for Joel Embiid with a package to a contender. So Cat and LeVert to a contender for Embiid. Again, this is a nice move for a team that may be retooling, is to get Joel Embiid right now when you're not trying to win a championship in the hopes that next season you can. And then a win now team giving up Embiid, who's going to be sitting on the bench for Cat and Karis LeVert. Obviously, both those guys are going to be more helpful than Embiid is for the fantasy playoffs, so I like it. All right, and now we have a couple of the trades from the Dynasty 30, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up the standings next to me so that I can be able to include the information there from that with what these trades look like. So first one, the blockbuster, was Dio, again, from Sports Ethos, to the great Ryan Canals. They swapped seconds. Blockbuster trade here. I don't even know how to analyze it. So many moving parts here, but just fun to see trades like that go down. This next one, we had Mike Waterloo, and actually I cut off who got what. So I'm going to actually pull that back up over here. So Michael Waterloo got Trey Jones and a first for Colin Sexton and Chris Dunn, and then Shake Milton was a drop from Sam and Saris. And so let's see. Colin Sexton is a guy that I've been a good bit higher on. I really like what he's done this season. I don't think that this is just like a one-off scenario of him just having a really good year. Excited to see what he can do moving forward. Chris Dunn is a solid player, but not a guy that has like a ton of upside or anything like that. And then getting back Trey Jones, who is solid. I don't think he's the point guard of the future in San Antonio, but he's the best point guard they have now. And I'm assuming, I don't know, he's going to be pretty good moving forward. Not a guy I'm super high on, but and a late-ish first. So right now, Sam and Saris is 10th in the standings. Our playoffs started yesterday, so could be a first-round exit there. And then Waterloo was 28th. So he has the 3rd best lottery odds right now. So getting the extra first for Colin Sexton and Chris Dunn, I like. I have Sexton ranked 100th, and then I have Trey Jones ranked 140, and then I have Chris Dunn way down there. I have Chris Dunn at 248. So would definitely take the first, obviously a lot more value there from the first than Chris Dunn. As long as it ends up being a good pick, but I'm assuming around pick 20 there. And then, I value Sexton more than Trey Jones. I think the first's enough for this to make sense for me. But I think at the same time, like Sexton and Chris Dunn is a win now move. Sam and Saris is in the playoffs. Waterloo's not. Fine by me for this to be kind of a win now move for Sam and Saris and for Mike Waterloo to do a little bit of a rebuild by getting back the first. That's what I think the main thing is. Trey Jones is a guy, I think it's just, he's interesting because he's so young, but at the same time, like, I don't think he's the point guard of the future for the Spurs, and it wouldn't shock me if they drafted one with one of their early firsts this year. So I think it's the hope that either who they draft is somebody that's more of a development project that Trey Jones starts next season, or they just don't end up drafting a point guard. But I think whether it's the draft, free agency, or trade, there's going to be a better point guard in San Antonio next year. Just with the idea of having a point guard for Victor Wembanyama. So I think the only way that this, not the only way, but I think a way this works out really well for Waterloo is Trey Jones starting again next season. Then we have Mike Barner and Mark C. Mike Barner being from RotoWire and Mark C. being from Sports Ethos, being their Dynasty guy. Let's see. And I just said, so Mark got Mike Barner's second, and Mike Barner is currently 20th in the standings, so missed out on the playoffs. And that's obviously the 2025 second, not this year, so it could end up being totally different in the standings. And Tyus Jones, who I have, I believe, pretty similarly, I think 138. For DeAndre Hunter, who I have at 177, who has been playing well recently. I think it's a nice win now piece. For DeAndre Hunter and the 2024 first from Jared Johnson, who is 11th and is also great. I know I said the great Ryan Canales earlier. Jared Johnson's also great. All these people on this page are great. And so Jared is 11th, so that is going to be kind of a round pick 20 once again. So getting Tyus Jones and a second next year for DeAndre Hunter and a first this year. I think this one's kind of interesting because so Mark just missed out on the playoffs and he got Tyus Jones and a second, who I think Tyus Jones, just like his brother, I don't know if he starts next year. He was awesome this year and has been, is going to continue to be. So it kind of feels like, dang, like Mike Barner probably could have used him. No, excuse me. Both of these teams missed the playoffs, so never mind. So yeah, getting DeAndre Hunter in a first, I like that. With the, I mean, even if it is kind of a later first, not huge on DeAndre Hunter in category leagues, but I think he still does have a little bit of upside there. But I think he's a guy that's just pretty solid in points leagues, not great in category leagues, because even though he's considered a really good defender, he doesn't really make defensive plays, get steals, get blocks often. Hopefully Tyus Jones starts again next year somewhere. And I think based on the season that he's had, that's seeming more likely than necessarily like he did at the beginning of the season. So I think this one ends up being fairly even. I think a lot of it kind of depends on who that first round pick ends up being, and how they pan out, which obviously with a lot of these trades, we won't know who actually won until years down the road. But since both these teams won't be playing again until next season, having in the extra first to bring in now, I think is pretty helpful. And this last one, Mike Waterloo made another trade to get Gigi Jackson and Benedict Mathurin for Jarris Walker and Andrew Nimhard with Rhett Bauer. And just a reminder that these are teams 27 and 28 in the standings, so it's not going to impact anything this season. And so Rhett got 2 Pacers and gave up a Pacer, and Mike got a Grizzly, and he's a Grizzlies fan, so that's cool. And Rhett's a Pacers fan, so it's just, I thought this one was kind of funny, just saying that was those were what the trades ended up being, and the fact that Rhett gave up a Pacer, like he gave up 1 to get 2. I think that was, I don't know, pretty interesting. But I can just, where I have these players ranked, I have, oops. Let me see. Mathurin, I have 87th, and I don't feel great about that. I feel like that needs to be trending down. These are from my latest rankings, which were post-trade deadline, so not that old. GG Jackson, I have 190th, and that's definitely trending up. Jarris Walker, I have 117. And it will trend up at some point. Like, he's a guy that's going to go up. And then Nimhard at 167, which I feel pretty good about. But yeah, I think it's just a bunch of young guys getting traded. I think based off the numbers that I have currently ranked, it ends up being even with Mike Waterloo getting the best and worst based on my Dynasty rankings players in this trade. So yeah, both teams kind of reloading with young guys that should help them be better next season. I already looked at Rhett's team and could tell you that he was planning to be a little better next season. Let's see. Excuse me. Mike has 2 firsts next year. Oh, he also has Wemby and Cade. So Mike's going to be better next year too. Goodness, this is making my team. I feel like I need to make some moves. I have only my first this year, and really my only guy is Evan Mobley. I don't feel really great about the rest of my team. I have guys I took in the first last year. I have Anthony Black. I have Kobe Buffkin and Bryce Sensabaugh. And then I have first next year, or this upcoming draft. And then I have 4 firsts the year after that. And I think that's going to be kind of when I'm like, okay, like hopefully I'm able to draft really well then and then be good after that. But this is a long, slow rebuild in the Dynasty 30. So hopefully that one ends up working out. But that's all the trades that I have to look at. I'm going to hopefully be able to do more of these Dynasty Q&A style things over the summer when there's a lot more time. And hopefully, like, because the season's not going on, so it gives me more time to analyze things. And again, draft content is coming slowly but surely. But yeah, it's staying busy right now. We have, less than a month left of the fantasy season, and then about a month and a half left of the regular season before the NBA playoffs start. So it's exciting times. You can follow us on Twitter at FBI Basketball. You can follow me at Noah Rubin 22. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Tank Me Later podcast. So thanks for joining me for this one, and I will see you next time.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.